عليا، قتل الدنيا فرح وشموع. ليه بيقولوا الحب قاسية، ليه بيقولوا شجن ودموع. أول حب يمر عليا، قتل الدنيا فرح وشموع. افرح واملا الدنيا اماني، لا انا ولا انت حنعشق تاني. افرح واملا الدنيا اماني، لا انا ولا انت حنعشق تاني. اول مرة اول مرة أول فرحة تمر بقلبي وأنا هايم في الدنيا غريب. قول أحكي ولا أخبي ولا أوصفها لكل حبيب. أول فرحة تمر بقلبي وأنا هايم في الدنيا غريب. قول أحكي ولا أخبي ولا أوصفها لكل حبيب. أول فرحة تمر بقلبي وأنا هايم في الدنيا غريب. قول أحكي ولا أخبي ولا أوصفها لكل حبيب. افرح
4 in the morning, Cairo local time, that is 2 GMT, and this is the North America service of Radio Cairo beaming to the West Coast. Followers everywhere, and welcome to a new transmission from the North America service of Radio Cairo. Our frequency is 9315 kHz on 31 meter band. With you on air sound technician Muhammad Sulaiman and myself, Amira Abu Noor. Let's start with a quick review of our program for this evening. Right after this, you'll be listening to a piece of music followed by literary readings. Our detailed news bulletin will be at exactly 4:15 from Cairo, that is 2:15 GMT, followed by top issues. 4:45 sports in Egypt, 4:50 long live Egypt, while tourism news will be at 4:55. Then a new live edition from the live side of the news will be at 5:05. Our final program for today will be economics, which will be transmitted at 5:10. While our final news update will be at 5:25 from Cairo. All this besides a collection of Egyptian songs and music that we hope you enjoy. And as for now, we will start with this piece of Egyptian music.
Radio Cairo presents Literary Readings, a weekly program prepared and presented by Saleh Shawatri. Hello listeners and welcome to another edition of the program. Today's edition is entitled, Can Souls Feed on Material Substance? And it begins as follows. I kept silent as my friend was busy verifying some official papers before him. I just rested my elbow on the corner of his desk and waited. A sheet of paper was just laid before my eyes. It was just an ordinary application form stating such items as name, sex, age, nationality, religion, and the like. Of course, I had nothing to do with it. Therefore, I tried not to poke my nose where I wasn't concerned. But, oh, my sinful eyes. They first caught the name and ran stealthily forward till they settled on a certain item. Religion, agnostic. Well, I wanted to know what that meant. I reached out for the dictionary, which stated that agnostic means person who believes that nothing can be known about God or of anything except material things. To me, this sounded rather incomprehensible, yet it seemed some kind of belief, even though negative. To me, mainly a villager, belief is the starting point for any act. It is the incentive behind whatever we may do or may not do, whether belief in material gain or belief in avoiding some material loss. It's still belief that spurs movement or curbs it. I am fully aware that belief here, in that restricted sense, may have several equivalents, such as interest, pleasure, and a sense of acquisition, and many, many others. These petty motives do apply to our trivial and temporary everyday pursuits. But if, by some magic, our life, with both its special and temporal aspects, were stretched before our eyes, how would our outlook be like, either retrospectively or prospectively? We would almost mock out our enthusiasm, bias, and prejudice. Belief, then, in that restricted sense of the word, is always there, sparing or curbing our petty everyday pursuits. But what about the integral part of our being, the essence, that extends backwards to even before our being mere clods and forward to God knows where? Yes, what about all that real essential entity that takes tangible shapes and acquires physical aspects, perhaps only to assert its existence to the short-sightedness of a physical world? Yes, what about that? Or could it be just a rootless plant? If that is the case, then it's in no way different from non-existence. But the fact that man is capable of asking questions certainly leads to the fact that the answer must be somewhere about. Actually, the act of rejecting all beliefs just means looking about for some more convincing substitute, the belief in which could stand one's doubts and inquiries. Throughout man's history, belief has been the end of ends. However, our modern times, dedicated as they are to material progress, have shown a deterioration in man's spiritual health and set an unprecedented record of breakdowns. This is so because we don't like to understand that souls can't feed on material substance. Through diligence and hard work, we may achieve a social and financial dazzling success, but it doesn't in any way follow that happiness is thus secured. Nowadays, most breakdown cases occur among very successful businessmen and the so-called notables. They, being well off, receive the best medical treatment, but they don't get complete recovery. Severe cases may be just reduced to fits, and there always hovers a burning question. What's wrong? What is missing? Something essential and far more vital than material assertion has been forsaken and undervalued. One has got to know what one really is, apart from blunt materialism, the unseen but the more enduring undercurrent, the divine spark that, in order to make us what we are, gets clad in flesh, bones, and clothes. What is missing is such a perception. Having to cross a river, you must first consider many vital issues. You can't rely entirely on the way the river looks. You've got to know how deep and how large it is. What's more vital is to know the nature and direction of its undercurrent. Once such perception is acquired and assimilated by our insight, you can either jump into a familiar and friendly river or take your time to get prepared for such an act. In case you lack such knowledge, you will be running a risk against all odds. Ups and downs of the tide and whirlpools will certainly be in wait for you. The same image applies to life. Those who have perceived the entity that encompasses all and have assimilated in their insight the fact that material is there to make tangible our spiritual existence are really those who have secured the optimum happiness because they are at peace with themselves as well as with whatever and whoever. They are in the belief that their yesterday had led to their today, and both today and yesterday will extend to their tomorrow. To the same extent of certainty, they do believe that their temporal existence is an early stage that extends after death to other forms of existence. Accordingly, they rejoice in their sense of belonging. They even embrace worldly misfortunes. Their philosophy in that respect is quite simple. In order to reach the boundless ocean, you've got to sail through many, many straits. When they act virtually, their pleasure is doubled. First, because the practice of virtue is self-rewarding in much the same way as taking care of flowers. Enjoying their fragrance is almost inevitable. Second, the glorious promised reward in the hereafter is another vital incentive, and this is how consistency is effected and the sense of belonging gratified. This is the role belief plays in man's life. Yet, nowadays, our world, deeply involved in material progress, is suffering from some maladjustment. Belief has been handed down to us without much labor on our part. Previous generations, through over-demanding curiosity and relentless spiritual struggle, had been granted that wealth of revelation called belief. Now we take it as a matter of course. We have long ceased to be grateful for it as a divine gift, a torch, and a faithful guide. Our world today seems, to a large extent, to be like a most successful businessman. Piles of cleverly invested money are being heaped in his safes. His employees are ever ready with applause for whatever he says or whatever he does. Yet, a constantly burning question is constantly wrenching his brains. What is missing? I've secured money and position, but what on earth is missing? I can't sleep without tranquilizers. I can't keep awake without stimulants. What is missing? Well, pharmacies are crammed with stimulants and tranquilizers, but they are incapable of relieving our exasperated businessman. The only medicine our materially wealthy invalid needs, I'm afraid, is not chemical, yet it's too abundant to be appreciated and too close to be perceived. Our materially wealthy invalid will not understand that his soul can't be fed with material substance. What he needs is a spiritual medicine called belief. Well, listeners, it's here that we conclude today's edition of the program. So until next week, best wishes from me, Salah Shawatri, as well as from our sound engineer, Muhammad Anwar.
4:15 in Cairo, 2:15 GMT. Time for the news. The news from the North America service of Radio Cairo. I'm Amira Bunnour, and we'll start with the headlines. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi starts an official visit to Greece and Cyprus tomorrow. Syria expresses outrage after a suspected US-led coalition strike for the first time killed regime troops. Warring factions in Yemen will relaunch peace talks on December 15th. And the US confirmed the death of the Daesh group's senior leader in Libya and also the senior leader of Al-Shabaab group in Somalia. These were the headlines, and now moving to more details. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi starts an official visit to Greece and Cyprus tomorrow, during which he is expected to hold tripartite talks with Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras and Cypriot President Nikos Anastasiadis. Talks are expected to tackle promoting cooperation in fields of tourism, transportation and energy, as well as coordinating stances as regards cooperation with regional and international organizations. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi today stressed Egypt's full support to Iraq in its war against terrorism and the decisions be taken by Iraqi government concerning reforms and combating terrorism. The president also pinpointed the importance of activating agreements and strategic cooperation between Egypt and Iraq in the fields of economy, security, investment and culture. The head of state's remarks came in a message conveyed by the president's advisor for national security affairs, Dr. Faiza Abu Naga, to Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi in Baghdad. During a meeting with Dr. Abu Naga, Abadi expressed appreciation to President el-Sisi and Egypt's supportive stance to Iraq and wishes for more cooperation between the two countries in the various fields. Moving to Syria, which has expressed outrage after a suspected US-led coalition strike for the first time killed regime troops, but the coalition denied its warplanes hit an army base in the eastern province of Deir ez-Zor. In a letter to the UN Security Council, Syria's foreign ministry condemned what it called a flagrant aggression that killed at least 3 soldiers and wounded 13 others. The US-led coalition said its only strikes in the area were some 55 kilometers southeast of the Syrian army base. The foreign ministry demanded the council act immediately in the face of this aggression and take appropriate measures to prevent its recurrence. Meanwhile, 3 people were killed and 5 wounded in rebel rocket fire that hit near the now-closed Russian consulate in Aleppo city. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow is ready to take part in a new round of Syria peace talks to be hosted by the United States, provided that international consensus is reached. Lavrov said Russia is ready to participate in the talks proposed by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry for December 18th and 19th in New York, but added that the nations involved in the talks need to agree first on a list of terrorist groups in Syria and another list of opposition groups that could be part of political transition talks. Lavrov also emphasized that the time and venue of the next round of talks should be acceptable to all participants. More on Syria. Syrian Kurdish factions will host a 2-day conference from tomorrow on a vision for Syria's future after being excluded from a meeting of opposition groups in Saudi Arabia. Opposition and Kurdish sources said the conference would be held in northeast Syria and include Kurds, the Assyrians Democratic Party, Arab figures and religious leaders from various parts of Syria. Kurdish conference organizer Sihanuk Dibu said political and military forces could meet in Al-Malikiya, a town in Syria's northeastern Hasaka province. The organizer said that the overlap with the Riyadh meeting, which is expected to open Wednesday, was unintentional, but it comes after Kurdish political figures protested their exclusion from the Saudi-hosted talks. This news is coming to you live from the North America service of Radio Cairo. War and factions in Yemen will relaunch peace talks on December 15th, the UN envoy to the country said today, voicing confidence that a temporary ceasefire will be in place before negotiations begin. Talks to ease the violence in Yemen have been stalled for months, with the conflict escalating since March, when a pro-government coalition led by Saudi Arabia began bombarding Iran-backed Houthi rebels. With the humanitarian crisis in the impoverished country deteriorating, UN envoy Ismail Wuld Sheikh Ahmed said a swift halt to the fighting was imperative for those caught up in what has increasingly become a regional conflict. The United States today confirmed the death of the Daesh group's senior leader in Libya, known as Abu Nabil, who was targeted in a November 13th U.S. airstrike carried out by F-15 aircraft on a compound in the city of Derna. Pentagon spokesman Captain Jeff Davies also confirmed that a senior leader of Al-Qaeda-affiliated group Al-Shabaab was killed in a U.S. military airstrike in Somalia carried out on December 2nd. The Pentagon named him as Abdurrahman Sandir and said the strike represented a significant blow to the group. Moving to the Israeli police, which said that a Palestinian stabbed an Israeli outside a holy site in the West Bank, seriously wounding the man before being shot and killed by officers at the scene. Police said today's violence occurred in the city of Hebron, home to 850 Israeli settlers who live with tens of thousands of Palestinians. Many of the Palestinian attackers in nearly 3 months of bloodshed have been from Hebron. Since mid-September, 19 Israelis have been killed in Palestinian attacks. At least 108 Palestinians died, including 73 said by Israel to be attackers, and the rest in clashes. Turkey said today it would not withdraw hundreds of soldiers who arrived last week at a base in northern Iraq, despite being ordered by Baghdad to pull them out within 48 hours. The sudden arrival of such a large and heavily armed Turkish contingent in a camp near the front line in northern Iraq has added yet another controversial deployment to a war against the extremist Daesh group. Ankara said the troops are there as part of an international mission to train and equip Iraqi forces to fight against Daesh extremists. The Iraqi government said it never invited such a group and will take its case to the UN if they are not pulled out. Washington, meanwhile, has told Ankara and Baghdad to resolve the standoff, adding it does not support deployments in Iraq without Baghdad's consent. More on Turkey. Turkey has summoned the Russian ambassador to voice its unease after Turkish media captured images of a Russian soldier apparently pointing a missile launcher as his warship navigated through the Bosphorus on its way to the Mediterranean. The ambassador was called to the ministry today amid escalating Russian-Turkish tensions following Turkey's downing of a Russian warplane near the border with Syria last month. Earlier, Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu called the Russian ship's passage with the missile launcher on a display a provocative act that has to end. The minister renewed a call for the two sides to overcome tensions through diplomatic means and for Russia to halt punitive sanctions on Turkey. Our final news item comes to you on the U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, who assured Ukraine today of continuing U.S. support and announced the release of an additional $190 million in U.S. aid to help support reforms. Biden, speaking today on a trip to the Ukrainian capital, also emphasized the need for Russia to fully meet its obligations under February's Minsk agreement that was intended to end the fighting in eastern Ukraine. Biden's remarks came after his talks with Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko. Biden also said Moscow has to fully implement the Minsk agreement and work constructively with Ukraine to create the conditions for free, fair, and safe local elections to occur in Donbass, referring to the collective name for the two rebel regions. With this final item, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude our detailed news bulletin coming to you live from the North America service of Radio Cairo. The news was read to you by Amira Abu Noor. Stay tuned for the upcoming top issues. Ladies and gentlemen, you're still tuned to the North America service of Radio Cairo. Time now for top issues, one of the political analyses of Radio Cairo prepared by Khalifa Hassanin. Our top issue for tonight will be on the Egyptian-Cypriot-Greek summit, objectives and results. Ladies and gentlemen, within the framework of the cooperation between Egypt and the East Mediterranean countries, the third Egyptian-Cypriot-Greek summit is to be held the day after tomorrow in the Greek capital Athens to continue the talks that began with the Cairo Declaration, which was followed by the Athens Declaration. The visit of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to Athens acquires special importance in view of the current developments in the Middle East, particularly the conditions in Syria and the terrorism threats, the matter which necessitates coordinating stances within the framework of the cooperation mechanism between Egypt, Greece and Cyprus. This trilateral cooperation initiative aims to enhance cooperation between the three countries and demarcate the international borders according to the international law. It is noteworthy that the three countries represent the joining points between the three continents, the matter which helps them make the best use of their significant locations in the fields of energy, trade and transport between each of Europe, Asia and Africa. The three countries have agreed to intensify their diplomatic cooperation in the international arena in order to be able to present their common views, especially those pertaining to the war against terrorism and the international challenges, such as the problem of the refugees, to the international community. This three-way summit represents one of the most important stages of the Egyptian foreign policy. Needless to say that the relations between Egypt and Greece are considered the oldest relations between two countries in the world, since they date back to 300 BC. Geography has also played a very significant role in establishing and developing the relations between the two countries over the history. On the other hand, Egypt has very strong and distinguished ties with Cyprus, since Egypt was among the first countries that recognized the Republic of Cyprus and established diplomatic relations with it starting from 1960. The Cairo Declaration indicated that the three countries that signed it are keen on enhancing cooperation between them in order to be able to face the challenges that threaten the stability and security of the East Mediterranean region. Among those challenges are the Arab-Israeli conflict, the spread of extreme ideas, terrorism and violence motivated by certain extreme ideology. The same declaration indicated further that those challenges do not only threaten the international and regional peace and hamper the economic and social development, but also the notion of statehood. The Cairo Declaration stipulated that the huge natural gas discoveries in east of the Mediterranean region will be a motive for the encouragement of the regional cooperation and not a cause for dispute and tension. This summit, which is held periodically between the three countries, will help enhance the institutional dimension of this trilateral partnership. In fact, the Egyptian-Cypriot-Greek Cooperation Initiative does not serve only those three countries, but also the countries of the region, which have to cooperate in order to demarcate their maritime borders according to the international law. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Top Issues, one of the political analyses of Radio Cairo, prepared by Khalifa Hassanin, presented to you by myself, Amira Abu Noor. Our top issue for tonight was on the Egyptian-Cypriot-Greek Summit, objectives and results.
Oh.